Super Rugby Pacific Round 4 is upon us. The team lineups are out. I have gone over them with a fine-tooth comb to find what I think are the best picks for fantasy this week, along with a few that you might want to avoid. We're going to go through each position, looking at all the best players. Don't forget, you can use the chapter select in the description to just skip ahead to certain positions if you don't want to watch the whole thing. But before we get into that, we'll take a quick look at the fixtures for this week, just to try and identify where most of the points are going to be scored, so that we have an idea of which teams we might want to favor picking our players from. You can see first up, Blues versus Brumbies in Auckland. Feel like this game will not be great for points. Blues, they don't score a lot, they don't concede a lot. Had a very messy game against the Hurricanes last week. A lot of set pieces, a lot of penalties, very sort of stop-starty. Brumbies, on the other hand, had quite a high-scoring game with the Chiefs, but it's going to be tough for them to play again away and against the Blues, a very strong defensive team. I really don't think this game will be good for points, but there will be a lot of forwards grind in this game. Both teams kind of play the same way. They like to try and bully you with their forwards, so could be some points available for forwards from these teams, but otherwise not great for racking up huge amounts of fantasy points in my opinion. Next, on Saturday afternoon, we have the Drua versus the Chiefs. Now this is in Lautoka in Fiji. It is a home game for the Drua and we know they are very strong there. But the Chiefs, they're probably the best team in the competition as well. I'm still going to favor them to come ahead in this matchup, but I do think it will be an open game. I do think points will be scored. It should be a fun one. Won't hesitate to pick players from either of these teams, especially from the Chiefs. Then we have Pacifica versus the Hurricanes. Home game for the Pacifica, so it will be on the North Shore in Auckland. And I feel like this will be a very good game for points. Hurricanes, they do like to play that expansive open style of rugby, move the ball around. And with Moana, I mean, they have the leakiest defense in the competition at the moment. Not as bad as last year. I mean, they're much sterner opposition this year, but still I think points will be scored, and I do like the look of players from both of these teams. Then we have the Tars versus the Western Force. Home game for the Waratahs will be in Sydney. The Force, they have showed a lot of backbone this year. The Reds really struggled to put them away last week, and I mean, they went to Canberra, put the Brumbies away, so this will not be an easy game for the Waratahs. I do not expect this to be a high-scoring game because of that. I think the Waratahs, they should have a good chance of winning this one, but it could be close as well. So, interesting game as a fantasy prospect. Probably not going to be picking a lot of players from both of these teams, but there might still be some here or there which are good options. And then finally, on the Sunday afternoon, we have Crusaders versus the Reds. This is a home game for the Crusaders. We'll be in Christchurch. They've just come off that bye. They'll be fresh. The Reds, on the other hand, they had that scare against the Western Force in Perth. They will be doing a lot of travel. They've gone to Perth, now they're coming to New Zealand. And yeah, I really do favor the Crusaders in this game. I think they will have the edge on the Reds. I was really unimpressed by the Reds in that Force game. They spilled the ball constantly. So yeah, the Crusaders players, they're fresh. They will be a good option for fantasy, I think. Now, if we jump into the positions, we'll start with the props. And yeah, not a lot going on with props. A pretty boring category. They never really score a lot of points. And you've got some really big standout options here in the Force props, Pearce and Robertson. They get a lot of minutes, they put in a lot of graft, they make a million tackles, they're just really consistent. I've gone with Robertson over Pearce because Pearce, he did get that try in round 1. Robertson, he's had less game time than Pearce, and he would have more points if not for that try. He has a better average, he makes more tackles, so if you're choosing between the two, I would go with Robertson. The other prop I've taken is Angus Bell, just because he is very busy around the park. He carries really well. He always busts tackles. He's done it in both of the games that he's played. He has not scored a try yet, but otherwise he's only played 2 games, so his average would be higher than the force props. But beyond that, really nothing interesting in this category. The Chiefs props are solid, but they do get rotated heavily, and because they're Chiefs players, remember you can only get 4 players per team. They take up Chiefs slots if you want to pick a lot of Chiefs. The Hurricanes props, maybe they would be good options. They're in that Pacifica matchup. They would have a decent chance of scoring some points there, maybe getting a try, but one of their props, Lauaki, he's completely fresh. And otherwise, the only other props I would look at are the Crusaders, like Tamati Williams going into that Reds matchup where they should be strong. But yeah, these are kind of marginal options to me. I will be sticking pretty comfortably with Robertson and Angus Bell. Now with the hookers, there is some interesting news here. Our 2 big options are kind of fresh faces. Cody Taylor is back for his first game of the season, as well as Taukei'aho. He did come off the bench last week, but now he is making his first start against the Drua. And these are your 2 front-running options, I think. Well, along with Ricky Riccitelli as well, who is Mr. Consistent, Mr. Solid. You really can't go wrong picking Ricky. Just the way the Blues play means that he's always getting lineouts. He's always getting a lot of game time. He's always got a shot at getting those more tries. He's solid at the line out, and he's pretty good around the park as well. Makes a lot of tackles, gets through his carries. Good player, can't go wrong with him. But yeah, Taukei'aho, I've picked him this week just because we know the way Taukei'aho plays. He's very good ball in hand. He carries a lot and he can bust tackles, get those offloads, and that all comes on top of prospects for more tries and those solid line out points. So I'm excited to give him a go. And the Drua, not always the strongest set piece. We did see their scrum get punished in that first half last week against the Waratahs, but otherwise I don't think you're making a misstep going with Cody Taylor as well. We know when the Crusaders are strong, they can really lean on that maul, lean on that set piece. When Cody came back last year, things really started to turn around for the Crusaders, especially at that set piece. And lastly, another option I like as well, Dave Porricky at the Waratahs. The Waratahs this year, they're coached by Dan McKellar. He is the guy who coached the Brumbies when all they ever did was maul, and they were very good at it. And the Waratahs this year, they are mauling a lot as well. Not necessarily with a lot of success, but nonetheless, they are trying it. And Porricky, he is the one to benefit from it. A try in both games. Wouldn't be surprised if the same thing happens again this week against the Force. Not the strongest team, definitely one you can consider. Moving on to the locks. Lock, normally a pretty boring category, not a lot of points available in it generally, but this week it is a bit more interesting because we have multiple players who are listed as locks in fantasy, but are in fact starting in the back row for their teams, which means that they will have a better chance to score more points. The big one here is one I've selected in my team, Jimmy Tupou for the Chiefs. He is in fact starting at number 8. I really like number 8s in fantasies. They get to come off the back of the scrum. They really get the chance to play with ball in hand, to carry and to get those juicy stats, the offloads, the busts, the line breaks, all that sort of thing. Really excited to pick Tupou for my lock this week. However, there are a few other back rowers that you might want to look at here as well for your second option. One of them is Cullen Grace. That is not news. The whole season he has started and been playing at 6 despite being listed at lock. The other 2 are kind of new. We have Wanga for the Drua here. He is also starting at 6, as well as Cam Christie. He's also starting at 6 for the Blues. So 2 kind of unknowns there, but just with the way the lock slot works, you know, probably not a bad punt to go for them. They could go well. The problem I do have with these sort of fresh guys though, just getting their first starts, is that they're probably more likely to be subbed than not. With Wanga here, I mean, The draw, they have Flyhalf on the bench. He's probably going to come on and he's either going to replace Nasilasila or Nasilasila will move from 8 to 6 and then Wanga will come off. That's quite likely to happen. And the same with this Cam Christie guy as well. I think the Blues have another fresher on the bench. I think it's Shea Clark. So he's likely to get a run. And when he does, it's probably Christie who is going to come off. So they probably won't get those full 80 minutes. They might miss out on some points in that respect. The same is true for Cullen Grace as well. We have seen him be the back rower who tends to be subbed out for the Crusaders. And that sort of logic is basically why I've gone with Patrick Tuipulotu this week, just because I feel like he's going to play the full 80. There's going to be a lot of forwards grind in that Brumbies game. Maybe he'll take advantage of that. Maybe not though. It's a bit of a muchness pick. Your other options here that I really like are Tupou Vai'i. He would probably be my first choice, but again, you can only pick 4 players from one team, so I really don't want to use up one of my Chiefs picks in the lock slot, apart from Tupou, of course. Another one I would consider is Shalfoon. I did have him in this game against the Chiefs where he really went gangbusters. Don't know if that'll happen again this week. I also expect he will be the one who gets subbed instead of Scott Barrett, so he's not going to get that full 80 minutes. That's kind of steered me off him this week, but probably still a good option really. It's not the end of the world if a guy does get subbed off, especially if it happens later in the game, like 65, 70 minutes, it doesn't matter too much. Otherwise, there's also Darcy Swain. He's just been super solid this year. Can't really go wrong with him. And yeah, really, you don't have to go with Tuipulotu. That's a soft pick from me. You can go for any of these guys, go with what you feel's right. And it's probably not going to make that much difference at the end of the day unless you get lucky. Moving on to the back rowers, my top picks are going to be Ardie Savea and Carlo Tizzano. Third pick, Yose, I'm a bit softer there. There's a lot of ways you could go here. Even with Ardie, I mean, I'm not sure that even though he had that big round last week, I don't know if it's going to continue this week. He got so many turnovers last week, despite not getting any in the first 2 rounds of the season. So I don't know if he's going to get them against the Canes this week, but we'll have to wait and see. Either way though, I think that will be an open game with lots of points scored, so quite happy to have Ardie in here. The other back row, Miracle Failangi, I think he's a bit better ball in hand if the ball comes his way, so he's definitely one to consider as well. But really, the only guy who's a lock here for me is Tizzano. He's been solid week in, week out. He's a guy you could probably captain if you just want to be sure you get someone who isn't a bust. These 3 guys here, McWright, Kale, Wilson, I'm big fans of all of them in fantasy. But this week, they all have very tough matchups. They're traveling away to New Zealand to face New Zealand opposition. Gonna be tough for them to score points there. Darren Alangi is good, but like I said earlier, Thanakai Vada, he is on the bench for the Endrua. There's a possibility Darren Alangi, he might get subbed, and they are in a tough matchup against the Chiefs. I do think the Hurricanes back row are a good place to look at, having that matchup against the Pacifica. Hida Lakai, Braden Yose, they are both starting this week. Neither have really shined this season. They've both been pretty quiet. Yose only came off the bench last week, but I mean, if you look at these matchups for the Hurricanes, they haven't had an easy start to the season. Tough games against Crusaders and the Blues and even the Drua as well. But that was a very open game and points were scored in it. So I feel like this Pacifica game, this will probably be the softest opposition they've had all year. And I think they might just break the shackles this week. I might be wrong. But if they do, we know that both Yose and Lakai, they can be really devastating runners in the open. So that's why I've gone with Yose as my third pick this week. Some other options I like though are Leo Willie and Langi Gleeson. I'm just a big fan of number 8s in this game. I think both of those guys could go well in their respective matchups. And if you think the Reds are going to go all right, I think Harry Wilson, he's a guy who's pretty solid. I think he might be solid even in a losing match. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. But he's definitely a guy I wouldn't write off. Looking at the halfbacks, things are quite interesting this week because Roygaard has been benched. He is not starting this week. He's been such a lock for so many people in this halfback slot, but now we can't rely on him. Who do we turn to next? To be honest, I really do not know. I was looking at Ratimer. I mean, he got his first start last week, but he didn't get much game time. It seems like the coaching staff, they really like Xavier Rowe. So Ratimer, he's really staring down the barrel of getting subbed early for Rowe. Don't like that pick. Tate McDermott was so good last week. He was sniping around the rucks. He was getting those breaks, but I mean, it was against the Western Force. I don't know if he will be able to replicate that against the Crusaders in Christchurch, but still, I mean, when you look at the options there, he's still looking kind of like the next best for me. I mean, Kyle Preston, he is there for the Crusaders, but he got that triple try on debut, but really, I mean, what else has he done? Kind of fortunate to get all those tries. Did get one against the Chiefs, but again, outside of these tries, he's not getting points. So not quite sure what to make of Preston. He has a very fresh face. A little bit risky to go for him, I think. And these other guys, I mean, Arianari, I do like that Canes Pacifica matchup, but I feel like he's gonna get subbed early because Roygaard's on the bench. So, and then I mean, Frank Lamani for the Drua, that's a tough match for them against the Chiefs, even though they are at home. And yeah, I mean, maybe Jake Gordon against the Force, like he's not really a sniping threat. I mean, he gets intercepts sometimes, but yeah, I mean, you just can't bank on that. So I've just gone for McDermott. I feel like he's just the best option with what we've got here. But yeah, I'm really not sure. Interested to hear your guys' thoughts about halfback. And at Flyhalf, again, we have this situation where the big lock, the big giant of the position, D-Mac, he has been rested. He is not even on the bench for the Chiefs this week. So we have to look at these other options here. And it's kind of tough. I mean, Willie Haveli, he's been the guy bubbling under D-Mac in the slot because he's been consistent every single week, getting pretty good scores. I have selected him. The only other guys to really look at, I think, is Josh Jacob. He did really well. He actually outscored D-Mac last week, only by 1 point. But yeah, I mean, he has been impressive. And they got a pretty good matchup against the Drua as well, so he's a live option. But again, if you're already maxed out, if you've made your 4 Chief selection, he's not a high priority in that selection, in my opinion. So that's why I haven't gone with him this week. And outside of those two, I mean, Donaldson, he's kind of solid, but he's not like try-scoring machine. Bowden Barrett, he has actually moved back to 10. He's starting at 10 this week for the Blues. Harry Plummer's gone to the bench. So I honestly think it just makes it even tougher for Bowden to score points, honestly, being at that 10 position. And I keep saying this about Barrett every round, the way he plays these days. He prefers to kick. He doesn't carry the ball. And in fantasy, kicking doesn't get you points. So yeah, really not a big fan of the Barrett pick. And looking at all the other 10s, we really have a lot of fresh faces. I mean, Pellegrini, he's been coming off the bench for Moana. He's good. He's better than Garden Bishop, but I don't think he's necessarily going to be a points machine. And yeah, I mean, I do like Armstrong Ravilla. I think he's better than Caleb Muntz, but yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, he did get some good points against the Hurricanes, getting proper minutes in that game. I mean, he might be an option, especially if this game's going to be open. But yeah, it's a little bit risky. It's a little bit risky to pick him going head to head with the Chiefs this week. So interested to hear your thoughts about this category as well. But Haveli, he's solid, he's reliable. I'll be sticking with him. Now with the midfield, we have another interesting development. We have another player starting out of position, and Daniel Rona. He is a midfielder in fantasy, and obviously we've seen him play midfield this season, but he's actually starting at 14 for the Chiefs against the Drua. So I really like him as a pick just because those outside backs, they do tend to get more points than the midfielders in fantasy. That just seems to be the way it is. And yeah, being able to pick up an outside back using one of my midfield slots in that Chiefs matchup against the Drua, which I do like for points. Yeah, this is a pick that I'm feeling pretty good about. The only thing that sort of gives me some pause on it is that Stevenson's back and he's on the bench. And in this game, Narawa is starting at 15 because D-Mac's gone. So I suspect what might happen is that Stevenson will come off the bench, he will slot into 15, and Narawa will move out to 14, and Rona will probably get subbed. Maybe not. Maybe Leroy Carter gets taken off. Rona goes to 11, but yeah, I don't know. I just got a feeling that Rona is going to be the one who ends up getting subbed here and might not get a full 80 minutes. I just hope he doesn't get subbed off early. And yeah, even if he gets subbed off at 60, that's still plenty of time for him to score a try or two, hopefully. So that's what I'm banking on here, but that's something you need to be aware of. Otherwise, looking at your other options, Tupaia and Leonard Brown, they're both still really hot right now. I prefer Tupaia, just the way that he plays, that very direct style gives him more chances to get those tackle busts and those line breaks, and he has been playing out of his skin so far. Leonard Brown, I feel like he's a guy who's pretty busy but doesn't necessarily get rewarded for it. Wasn't true last week, he got those 2 tries, but yeah, I feel like as we move through the season that line of thinking will prove out. David Havili, he's a pretty solid option. He was good in that Chiefs game, and I do think they will go well against the Reds. So yeah, if you really like that matchup as well, Havili, not a bad choice. Another thing to know about the Crusaders is that Darryl McLeod's also coming back this week at 13 as well, getting his first start, but Almore has gone to the bench. I suspect Almore, he's going to get subbed on as an impact player, and I suspect that McLeod is going to be the one who gets subbed off for him, so going to get limited game time there if you are looking at McLeod. Peter Umaga-Jensen, he was actually pretty good in a game against the Blues that did not provide a lot of opportunity for the backs. So, I mean, definitely an interesting one to consider, but not a first choice for me. And beyond that, not a lot going on here. I would just say again, stay clear of Rico. Like, 13 is not a great place to be playing at the Blues. You're not going to be getting a lot of ball. The forwards are hogging the ball, and when it's not the forwards, it's going out to Talia, and he's like slipping through 50 tackles and scoring a try. So, and yeah, against the Brumbies, probably not the place to start picking Rico either. If the Blues do improve, he might be a guy worth looking at when they come up against those easier matches like against the Pacifica, for example. But yeah, this ain't the round for it. And finally, moving on to the big guns, the outside backs. There is some big news. Ruben Love and Ravutal Munda of the Drua, they are both returning this week. Both of them have 0 points because they have not made any starts this season, but they are the real deal, especially Ravutal Munda. He is just a stats machine. He will be on the fantasy radar very soon if you haven't noticed him already. I haven't really settled on my outside backs here, to be honest. I probably will find a way to put Ravutal Munda in there. The only thing that gives me pause is that it's that matchup against the Chiefs. It's going to be tough. There might not be that many opportunities for the Ndrua, but he is that good. Ruben Love I do really like because he is in that matchup against the Moana Pacifica. It should be an open game, should be the Canes scoring a lot of points. but he has been away for a while. You always got to wonder with these guys coming back from injury, are they going to get the full 80 minutes? Are they going to be a bit rusty? Are they going to have the fitness? There is a little bit of a risk there, but yeah, I do really like Ruben Love, and I'm going to give him a go. You do have to seriously consider the other Hurricanes backs though. I mean, Kilina Hollow, he's pretty dangerous. He will probably benefit from the openness of this game. I mean, Harry Godfrey, he's been playing like a champ as well, filling in a 10, kicking the goals, getting these points. Can't go wrong with him either. He will probably do well this week. Ponevai, probably not going to be a guy you pick over those Hurricane outside back options. Next cabs off the rank for me are going to be the Crusaders Giants and Sevu Reece and Will Jordan. Both extremely good players, and I do like them in that Reds matchup. They probably will be scoring points here as well. I do kind of prefer Reece over Will Jordan, just because Will Jordan, he's a bit of a link man. He hits the gaps, he makes the last pass, but he doesn't get to score those tries for himself necessarily. I mean, he will score plenty of tries this year, but will it be as many as Sevu Reece? Probably not. And Sevu Reece, he's a really greedy player. He goes out there, he looks for the ball, he carries it, he runs backwards, he runs sideways, he does anything to get the tackle bust, he can do the offloads, he can get the try assists as well as just scoring them himself. So I'm a big fan of Sevu Reece for fantasy. Don't know if I'll stick with him with my captain this week, but I mean, you know, I just love him that much. I might. Beyond that, you do have the Chiefs backs in the form of Leroy Carter and Narawa. Both very good options. Narawa, he is starting at 15 this week. I think that will be good for him actually. He didn't score that well in that Brumbies game despite the Chiefs putting on 49 points. The ball was really hogged by that midfield in that respect, but I think being at 15 will benefit him a lot. He'll be receiving those kicks, he'll be making decisions at the back. He does like to carry, but he does have a very balanced game as well. So yeah, I think he will be a better option this week. Don't be scared off him because of what happened last week. If you do want a Chiefs player in your back three, he's probably not a bad option. I do like Carter as well, but like I said earlier, he might be the one who ends up getting stubbed for Stevenson. Probably not, it'll probably be Rona, but there is a chance of that, so keep that in mind. Two other guys to consider as well, Jorgensen and Callaway. The Waratahs, they have that match at home against the Force. I think they will do well. Jorgensen's been super solid, and Callaway, I mean, we all know what he can do. He is starting at 15 this week. But yeah, I mean, the Force, they were so nuggety last week. I'm just a bit worried that this might actually be a bit of an arm wrestle, even though it's in Sydney. And yeah, maybe these guys won't necessarily get a huge amount of opportunities, but I'm not 100% sure on that. You might have different ideas. If you do, if you like the Waratahs in that game, Callaway and Jorgensen, they are your guys to look at. Otherwise, because I don't think I've mentioned him yet somehow, but the big gun Taumoi Falau, I mean, kind of hard to ignore this guy after his first two rounds, but then he had a bit of a bust against the Highlanders. The ball just didn't come his way. It really seemed to go out to Eli Marlowe's ring for whatever reason. Taumoi Falau, he did get a bit of ball being that runner off of set piece plays, but he didn't get much purchase out of it because I don't think he's that good in traffic. He's not a crash bash kind of guy. He needs to be in open space. I feel like this Hurricanes matchup, I feel like it will be an expansive open game. So I feel like he will be a better option this week. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that one. Definitely a serious one to consider. And if we look at the percent selected as well, just to make sure we haven't missed anyone, the only guy here we haven't really talked about is Mark Talea. And yeah, I mean, we saw what Talea can do last week. With just a couple of touches, really, in a pretty tough game, he ran through like 5 guys and got a try. So Yeah, he is a bit of a magician. I do think the Blues will beat the Brumbies this game, even though it will probably be tough. And yeah, Mark, it's probably going to be a bit boom bust, like he'll either score or he won't, and it's kind of tough to pick, but yeah, still can't go wrong with him. I think he does have a large upside. Toole, Tom Wright, both very good players, but again, that Blues matchup, it's away for them. It's going to be tough. It's going to be probably a forwards dominated battle, and yeah, I don't think this will be a gangbusters week for those two. As for picking your captain this week, for me, the couple of options I was considering was either Tizano or Sevu Reece. Tizano, he's super consistent. I feel like if you want that stability, you can captain Tizano and feel comfortable. He's going to get around that 50-60 points. He's just that good. Otherwise, you can look at your outside backs. They're your guys who can really rack up those giant scores if it's their week, and they can really thrust you up the leaderboard if you captain them on the right week. For me, I'd be looking at Sevu Reece, but yeah, I mean, it's risky, right? So you have to make that decision for yourself if you want to play it safe or go for that big play. I haven't quite decided yet, to be honest, but yeah, I'll probably end up sticking with Reece, but we'll see. Anyway, guys, that is my best picks for this round. Hopefully you found it useful. Let me know in the comments if you have any thoughts of your own about it, and stick around for next week where I'll have my recap as well, where we look at how the team went and who the big movers and shakers were, and I'll see you then.